And I am a multifaceted person in the industry. My main work is producing and writing, but I feel like when I get to do the acting part, I feel like it's always such a blessing and such a joy. My life does not depend on it. So the way that I wanted it to, and the way it was when I was first starting out. And so I just let it go and let her rip, because it's just pure joy for me to do now.
If you're a professional actor challenged by an increasingly fragmented industry, then this podcast is for you. The Hollywood Actor Podcast is an anthology made up of the stories of actors building their bodies of work by redefining themselves, reframing their goals, and reevaluating their opportunities. No matter where we are in our careers, we're always looking to be inspired and to share ourselves across our community. This podcast offers that opportunity to guests and to listeners alike as we all discover what it means to be a working, professional, successful actor. This is Jamie Young, and you're listening to the Hollywood Actor Podcast. Today's guest is Lisa Lucas. Lisa studied theatre at Bowdoin College and trained at the National Theatre Institute and at London's Guildhall School of Music and Drama. Her credits include the short film Father Lucius 2019, the short film Ageless 2014, and Woody Allen's Sweet and Lowdown 1999. Catch final cuts on the festival circuit and follow Lisa on Facebook and at Noel Films on Instagram and Twitter. Now let's talk with Lisa Lucas.
Okay, God, I gotta turn the clock back. Bear with me. So I started off being really, really impressed by classical ballet. I credit that to my mother. She took us to the theater all the time. We lived in Southern California in the 70s and 80s, and I just loved dance. So at a very young age, I began classical ballet training. I was just one of those freaky kids that was really dedicated to a craft at a very young age. And I don't know, I'm a Capricorn, I'm super focused. And so I fell in love with the ballet, the costumes, telling the story, being on stage. Had great teachers in Santa Barbara, California, Bob and Carol Hanlon. They were from New York, American Ballet Theater, and they were terrific. And so I started training and performing at a really young age. And around 12, I was, semi-professionally performing the Nutcracker and doing all that kind of stuff. So I was really, really into the theater bug. And even though I wasn't saying words, we were telling a story. And I, viewers, bear with me, the tragedy, this could be the movie later. When I was 17, I had an opportunity to apprentice with the San Francisco Ballet. I went on vacation with my parents for a couple of weeks and broke my foot in a swimming pool when a kid did a cannonball in the shallow end. It was devastating for me after many, many years and of wanting this only sole goal to move to New York and be a dancer. It was one of those crossroads in life where you have to figure out what you want to do. And I was so young, and it was pretty devastating. So my mom was, and still is, an incredible guide in my life. And she basically said, all right, you're never going to dance on point again. The doctor told you that. That was harsh to hear. So what are you going to do? How are you going to channel this? And I was, depressed for a couple of weeks. And let's face it, that depression showed up in therapy years later. But she's like, what about theater? What about, you could still perform, you could still do these things. So I had a great theater program at my high school, which I went to for middle school and high school, called Dunn School in Los Olivos, California. It was a prep school, boarding. I was a day student, and And fortunately and wonderfully, we had a theater teacher named Richard Griffel, who went on to direct and work at the Berkeley Rep. He was wonderful and so inspiring, and he, introduced all of us to the great plays and musicals at the time, and hysterically, and we were so into it, and so I became this theater kid, okay? And but I also played soccer and all this stuff. So I kept thinking to myself, God, maybe that happened for a reason, because I love this so much. I love connecting with the audience. I love telling a story, and I found my voice in it, and I could feel my body. So the movement part, I love to take on characters' physicality, and I loved costumes, and all that stuff. So I really, really got into it. And we did a lot of straight plays and musicals, and one time we were performing Pippin, which was a little risque then for high schoolers.
For high school,
we didn't even know what was going on half the time. And a woman in the audience was I believe, aunt of somebody at my school who came to see one of the performances, and I was playing the leading player. She came up to me afterwards and she said, "Hey, my name's Marty Blumenthal. I'm an agent in Los Angeles. You're really good. Come see me this summer. Maybe you want to be in the movies." And I was like, okay. And so I just thought it was funny, and that was the time of, let me just set the stage here, of John Hughes and Pretty in Pink and 16 Candles and all that stuff. And, it was really that total 80s vibe. It was, I believe, 1982. And so, I went down, I saw Marty. She was like, "All right, let's start taking you out on auditions." I was so green. I didn't know anything. I didn't know a thing. I went to these cattle call auditions. I went to some pretty, smaller venue things with some big directors. I had no idea who they were or what I was doing. There was no internet, kids. You have to understand. No internet, no cell phones. I'm 16. My parents let me drive down by myself. "Oh yeah, I'll be home for dinner," And so, little did I know, at one point I did audition for John Hughes, and nothing went anywhere, and I got this thing, and it was for a movie called Some Kind of Wonderful, and I was just like, "Oh my God, this could be huge. Maybe I won't go to college. Maybe I'll be an actor." And you know how we do. You put that whole thing in your head of, what if this happens, and so I was really close. It was between me and a couple other people. And then, of course, they gave the part to Leah Thompson. And that's all good. She was great in it. But it got me. And I had to go in there and do these emotional scenes. And I was like, okay, I need to work more. I need to train. I need to hone. Like, I did it. I came this far, but what would it take to really to book that thing next time? You know what I mean? And so I talked a lot about it with Mr. Griffel, my teacher at the time, and he was just like, okay, you've got to really, if you're going to do this, you've got to get serious. And so applied to go to college, got into Bowdoin and Berkeley, decided to go to Bowdoin back east, a small liberal arts college in Maine. And they had a terrific theater program. They had a theater society called the Mask and Gown. I was a member of it for 4 years, head by this lovely man named Ray Rattan, who was a Yale drama school graduate. He just passed away about a few months ago, which I cannot believe. And all of his former students were still like writing him in the rest home. He was just a delightful, charismatic, incredible man. And so I just, with my other studies, launched into theater majorly. I did the classics, modern plays, still did dance, but I was doing modern dance, but I was kind of hesitant. just, kept getting like ingenue roles and things like, in my classes, we do tackle the elephant man and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then
Well, you wanted to work. There you go.
I did. I loved it. Some of the people that I had in my grade went on to be really great actors, and I'm like, what happened to me? No, but and then there's a place where, in hindsight, I can see this now that, people always say, oh, it's about the work, it's about the work, it's not about this, it's not about that. And it's so true, because right now at my age, I will work on a really kick-ass short film with incredible people when I get offered a super cool role. I'll work on a major TV series in a, guest star. I'll work on a indie film. It's about, who you get to play and the people you get to work with. And it's just, that's what it is, sinking yourself into it and becoming it and having fun. I love it. It's always been a joy for me. And so in college, everybody, it's coming up on junior year, a lot of people go abroad or take it off or, do whatever. And I'm like, God, what should I do? And I was super into it. So I go, you know what? I'm going to apply to go to the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, which is also known as the National Theater Institute in Waterford, Connecticut. So here I am. I'm 21 years old, and I, got into this program at the National Theater Institute, aka the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center in Waterford, Connecticut, which I highly recommend to anybody wanting to pursue any kind of acting or theater, or even if you want to do film. It's one of our very best in the country, and it was just a magical experience. At the time, it was 1988. Let's see what was happening on Broadway. The Phantom of the Opera had just opened. The Burn This with John Malkovich. It was sort of that late 80s theater stuff going on in New York, and we were so close, and we were really close to the Long Wharf Theater and Yale teachers. We had some of the teachers from Yale Drama School. It was just magnificent. I felt like I was walking on air every single day. And the campus is on the former Eugene O'Neill estate, okay? And so there's the mansion and there's the outbuildings and all this stuff, and you're on the water, and you're just in this magnificent spot where you can see his plays. You know what I mean? Like at one point we did All Wilderness, and I got to play Muriel, and I'm like looking out, as in the play, I think she's 18 years old, but I still totally had that sensibility at 22, and I'm, acting with this guy, and we're just like in the spot where he probably wrote the play,
Right,
and
yeah.
channeling it and the innocence of that time and everything. And it was just, oh my God, the whole thing was magical. I learned everything there. I was really the first time I was exposed to intense stuff, like, writing with playwrights and voice work and mask work and dance and movement and directing. And, we did all aspects of theater, and of course, hardcore acting teachers and everything, and the method and, exploring all these different things with top people. And I was so happy there. So happy. And I couldn't get enough of them, and I didn't want to leave. And we were a really tight group, and there weren't that many of us in my class. I think there's
I don't blame you.
like 30, and I'm still in contact with a lot of them. And so that, and some of them have gone on to do incredible things. And so that summer, after that program was over, we did a college exchange program with the Guildhall School in London. Then students from Guildhall came to the O'Neill to study American musical theater. So we went over there to study Shakespeare. And then part of our program was we went to Ireland and we were at Trinity College, and we were studying with the playwright Hugh Leonard, the Irish playwright Hugh Leonard, who was toast of Broadway at the time. I mean, Jamie, I'm like, okay, it doesn't get any better than this, right? It was so fantastic. And of course, very intimidating to be in England and, having to learn hardcore standard English, which, we're over here and we're thinking, oh, I'll do a British accent, da da da. It's all the same. And to get over there as a young person and realize, there's 1,000 dialects of just the English language, depending on where you're from. And they were so amazing there. They have a language library at Guildhall. And I was fooling around one day in class, before class. And one of the professors said to me, would you mind going down to the Language Institute? We want to get your California Valley girl speak. And I'm like, what? And so I am on record. I'm not kidding, because I grew up in Southern California doing like the Moon Unit Zappa, oh my God, like really? Totally. And like I'm on record doing it. And they had me read all of this stuff for posterity. And I just laughed my head off after that. It was hysterical.
So funny.
Meanwhile, back to the sonnets and what I'm doing wrong. But no, but it was so fun. We did like, sword play and, full blown fencing and all that kind of stuff. Oh my God. It's just like playing, and you just dream of it. Of course, it was so freaking scary, I have to say, to, go up in front of these, RSC kind of people who were going to, really judge you for, I was terrified. However, what you find, and what made me really fall in love with classical theater and Shakespeare, is that, it's all about the human condition. So whether your accent's perfect or not doesn't matter. It's, what you're relaying and that connection to humanity. And when you find that, when that clicks in for you, when it's not just the words and it's not just the sing-songy nature of the, triplets and all the different things you have to do with those kind of, technical things, when you really find the humanity in it, oh my God, it's like a power source, and it just, you can so feel it in every one of the plays, and to this day. And I mean, I think that's why those things have endured, and that happened for me. And I'm like, calling my parents from London going, I'm going to be a Shakespearean actor. This is what I'm going to do.
And they're like, what? and and so I did come home, and I ended up moving to San Francisco. My family's from SoCal, so I ended up moving to Northern California because I have a lot of family up there, with my best friend from college and my best friend from high school. And we got an apartment in San Francisco, and I got a regular job in advertising. I was kind of like Peggy in Mad Men. I was a copywriter, starting at the bottom, and that's why I always loved that series. It's so right on. But I was kind of in that place of, you get out of school and you're kind of like with your parents, okay, so we shelled out all this money, now what? And are you going to get a real job? And so I thought, okay, I'll go into advertising. I don't know what I was thinking, but at the same time, I did a dramaturgy internship at the Magic Theater, and I don't know, if you know about that, but that was,
Sam Shepard was there for a while.
Shepard, he did, stuff in the early 80s there. So this was about 10 years later, but 8 years later. But it still had that, sheen on it from him and new playwrights. And so it was a year-long program. I had to read over 1,000 plays. And I really, and I had to sit through rehearsals of all their new plays and stuff. And I just learned so much from reading work. And I got an agent, and I did some, commercials and stuff like that. But I hadn't, you didn't really do any major acting while I was there, except for some film work. And one of the things I did, which sadly someone found like 5 years ago and got me back into acting again because they found it on the internet. But you know how they used to do those scary ad council commercials? I mean, I think they still do them today on regular TV, where it's like, it's always about drugs or alcohol or something to scare you to
Oh, the
death,
super grim.
yeah, super grim. And so I got cast in this commercial for AIDS awareness, and it was the first time. It was right around the time that people were just, in the mainstream consciousness going, oh, it's not just a gay disease, like, because that's how it had been, branded by the Reagan administration at the time. But it was like, oh, this can go to heterosexuals, this can go to your kids. Oh, P.S., this can go to anyone. So we were two high schoolers, and we said we were taking a test, and we were nervous about the results. And then it was like the AIDS test, bah, bah, and like freak out. And, and so scary. And it played for years.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did
Wow.
that.
So you're starting to develop a little bit of a brand. You were the AIDS girl.
Oh, yeah.
You go
Right.
into casting offices. They're like, I know you. You have AIDS, don't you?
I know, so scary. But it was one of those ones where I didn't even know what I was doing, and I didn't know the impact of it really as a young person, of what that meant until later, until I had, friends die, and, it got really real. But so I did that, and then, life takes you to different places, and I was living my life there thinking, okay, I'm going to just, start doing what I want to do. I was getting way more involved in theater there and still doing the advertising. And I had a big presentation I had to do that was in the East Bay, and I had to cross the Bay Bridge and, get there on time and all this stuff. And I had all these plans in the back of my car, and lo and behold, cell phones had just been invented. And people don't remember this, but when they first came out, there were a ton more car accidents because there were no laws to say, like, don't be on your phone driving. And so I'm at a stoplight in Berkeley, and I'm on my way to this giant presentation with my company, and a car hits me. I'm at a stoplight going at 70 miles an hour, and he was on his phone, and I woke up in emergency. And I don't even remember it happening. And I had a clenched fist in the hospital, and when I woke up, I opened my fist, and there was a small note inside that said, "Hi, my name's Judy. I saw it all. Call me." And I was like, what in the hell? And so anyway, I got through this car accident where I had, survived, and I had to rehabilitate for a year, and I tore ligaments in my neck and my back and cracked bones. And anyway, I was alive. I had my seatbelt on. So that was a big turning point for me. And it was kind of like, well, what parent is going to take care of me? And my mom had moved to New Mexico. She was living in Taos, New Mexico, actually, up in the mountains. And she's like, I'll take care of you. Just move out here. And so, when I could drive, my friend Michelle took care of me in San Francisco for a while, and while I rehabilitated, and then I moved out here, and that's kind of how I got to New Mexico. And I fell in love with it. It wasn't as happening right now for film and TV as it was then, but there was a lot of performance art going on, and this whole art gallery scene, and they were doing some films here, and I got an agent, and when I could, walk and do things again after about a year, I started auditioning again, and I got into this Kevin Costner movie, Wyatt Earp. At the time, it was Lawrence Kasdan, and they'd taken over the whole town of Santa Fe, and just like, it was a crazy, crazy summer. And I got to be in the family of Gene Hackman on the wagon train, and oh my God, it was just awesome. And I just out there, and like Abiquiu was like a prairie girl, and it felt so real, and it was like 2 weeks of work, and I was just like, oh my God, this is fabulous. And so I don't know, I was an impressionable young woman. I had all these big dreams. I was writing, I was doing these things, and working in restaurants, waiting tables at fancy restaurants. And I, fell in love with an artist type guy. And, we were kind of him and I against the world, and we're going to be these artists and blah, blah, blah. And, we ended up getting married. And of course, we moved to New York, and we had a pretty great life there for a few years where dove into the whole film and theater scene there and did some plays. I was in an Alan Ball play before he made it, just this totally off 100 times Broadway thing of what was it called? It was called like Six Dresses or something. I can't even remember the name of it. And he was amazing. I had no idea who he was. I did some independent films, some commercials. I auditioned for Sex in the City, along with 3,000 other people in the rain. I remember standing in line and the people going, God, it's this HBO thing. I hope it's not porn. I hope my mom can watch this. And I was like, God, the writing's so good, but what is this? And then people were like, well, it's Sarah Jessica Parker, and so it must be somewhat respectable. And so did not get that one, but it was fun and exciting. And so we were having this great life. And then all of a sudden, tragedy struck his family, and his father died, and his family was from California too. And his dad died in a horrible way, had an aneurysm. And so we had to go back to California and leave New York, which was, I think we would have stayed there forever. But it was really kind of the downfall of our relationship and everything else when we had to move back and take care of the family. And it was this really rough, tough time. And I was like, landing back in LA, and I'm thinking like, okay, I'm going to get back in and blah, 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 after we kind of, got the family sort of on track, but it still was, some tough times. And so after about a year of just like constant auditions, constantly feeling like a piece of meat, constantly having people say to me, and you have to understand, this was like the blonde, blue-eyed 90210 era. And so everything was like, that was it. That was what people wanted. And I came in there with this like dark, brooding, dark hair, wah, Shakespearean, wah, and all this stuff, method actor. And it's just not what they were about. And so people would say stuff to me like, oh my God, you were so great, but you're just not what we want. Thank you. Okay, thanks. And then I did like a couple vampire movies, and it just was going down. And
That's
I
dark and
wasn't,
brooding, yeah.
yeah, it wasn't in somewhere really suspect in like the Simi Valley, and I'm like, oh dear God, I got to get out of here. So I just I kind of had a super reality check, and I was like, I really am at the core of me a writer, and I can't do this anymore, even though I love it so much. It just I really got disgusted with the commercial nature of what it was then, and I couldn't break through there. And so I'm like, you know what, I'm going to go behind the camera. So I started working in TV, and I ended up, working my way up from like PA and associate producer to executive producer. It took 12 years. And I worked.
And you're still in LA at this point, right?
All in LA, 35 plus TV shows on lots of different networks. And, it was great. And I, for the first time made, a nice amount of money, and, was in the unions and did all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm a producer writer, and I'll never act again, or maybe, I don't know, but probably not. You know what I mean? I just kind of let go of the dream. And but I loved what I did, and I was very fulfilled by it. And then, I had 2 children, the marriage probably never really recovered since we moved back. And, honestly, so I was like, God, I just kind of miss my mom, and I think I need to get a divorce. And it was just one of those, really trying times in life. And I went out to visit my mom in New Mexico. And every time I would fly back to LA, I would just cry, like, why don't I live there? My heart is there, But really, a lot of it was, I needed to reevaluate my life and everything. But so I was working on this show at this company called Magical Elves that was like my dream company. And they did like Top Chef and, that Project Greenlight and,
Okay.
all that kind of stuff. And
Wow.
working with amazing people, and the people that own the production company were just the smartest, most delightful people I'd ever work with. And I'm like, okay, I made it here. This is what I'm gonna do, and fully prepared to stay with them, sign a contract with them. And the editor, my friend Carol, who was one of my editors at the time and dear friend, we were cutting the show. We were almost done with this season of the show. And she's like, and I had always been complaining, I just want to get back to Santa Fe and blah, blah, blah. And so she, read the trades every day, and she saw this job for a executive producer, running the Reels channel, all of their programming in Albuquerque. And I'm like, Reels channel, what's that? I'm like, do they make trailers? Like, I just had never heard of them. I didn't know what they did. And so meanwhile, I'm at this job where they want me to stay there long term, and it's an amazing amount of money, and I'm doing exactly what I want to do. But meanwhile, I'm working super hard. Marriage is totally falling apart. Love my kids, hate LA, don't know what to do. I, on a whim, email my resume to the president of the company there, and he called me in 15 minutes, and he's like, we'll fly you out here, and I'm like, I can't go out there. What? I mean, I just kind of took those times in life when you just throw a dart at a dartboard in the dark and you think, well, it's not going to hit anything. And so like 3 weeks later, I think I had the time I flew out. I was there for 2 days. They showed me around, and I met this incredible guy, Steve Holzer. Is a friend for life, and he and I were going to conquer the world there and run, 8 different shows, and they were going to get into miniseries and all these different things. So I was like, okay, and I'll get back to New Mexico. And so I decided to take it, and it was a big jump to, sell our house, move, bought a giant house here. Ended up, yes, getting divorced and all of that. But I, loved what I was doing. It was the best thing for me and my family at the time, even though it was really difficult. But, it all works out in the end. And so while I was there, I had this incredible team of people. And one of my editors was this young woman, Hannah McPherson, who you may know, who's doing pretty well for herself.
Pretty well, yeah.
Pretty well for herself. And so here she was, like starving, totally talented. Walks into my office to be an editor, and I'm like, look at her work, and I'm like, oh my God, yes, you're here, and let's go. And so she was one of our top editors, and I noticed how she would stay late every night, and I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, I'm working on some of my own stuff. And so you should let her do that. And then we got to work on some really cool series together. And I just really loved her friendship and thought she was super talented. And so then she was getting ready to do this movie and this little project. And some of the other guys there were like, we found you on the internet. It's like they did an intervention on me. And I had about 10 people come into my office one day and go, okay, you didn't tell us you were an actor. And I was like, because I'm not anymore. And what are you guys doing? Get back to work.
Isn't that PSA from San Francisco days?
They found some stuff on the, and I go, okay, that was a long time ago. Just, please just don't bring it up. Just go back to work, and I had really, really stifled it, and so Hannah calls me up and she goes, well, I wrote this thing and I wrote you a part. And I go, what? No. And she goes, yeah, and you're doing it. and you're going to be an alien trapped in a real estate realtor's body. You're going to lure people into your husband's mad laboratory until the mothership comes back to take you. And, it's this crazy little thing. And I'm like, Hannah, I'm not doing that. And she's like, yes, you are. Your call time is da-da-da tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, shit. And so I'm driving to the set reluctantly, and I'm like calling up Scotty Milder was one of the writers too, and I'm calling him up going, what's my motivation? I'm like totally freaking out. I hadn't done anything in so long. I'm like, dear God, and so inappropriate, like you would never do that. And then I show up there, almost everybody had worked for me, you know what I mean, and under me. And so it's a very strange thing for the tables to turn, for them all to be telling me what to do. But it was hilarious. And so I did all these scenes over like 3 days, and it was so much fun. And I just was like, oh my God, I need to do this again. And the most funny thing about the whole experience was here I'm like sitting at Crafty. I'm like horrified. I like just did my major scenes with the gun and all this stuff. And I'm sitting there in the corner going, what did I just do? Did I just make a fool of myself? And I overhear Hannah talking to some people, and she didn't know I was sitting there. And she's like, well, God, we didn't know if she was going to suck or what, but, thank God she was great. You know what I mean? And it was like, they had this whole like sigh of relief that I was going to just completely be hideous. And so that was I was just, you know what I mean? So it's funny when you're an actor because you have those moments of, you know exactly how it is, of such insecurity and vulnerability, and you're like, okay, sometimes we get validation and sometimes we don't. And then I took off basically like 14 years, and going back in was terrifying, and I just had no clue if I was doing anything right or whatever, but all I knew was it felt really good.
Thanks for listening to the Hollywood Actor Podcast. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share.